It won't let me.
Good afternoon again. Happy to be with you here today to talk about some updates to the short-term rental filing portal. And I am happy to say I have Miss Wendy Walker with me today, my esteemed colleague. So she and I together are going to show you some of the updates, and we're going to explain a little bit about the why these changes happened. And today we're going to give you a live demo of the new portal. Next slide. And again, my name is Brandy Sanner. I'm the account executive for San Antonio. And Wendy is the project manager who has been involved in the entire project to stand up the portal for the hotel occupancy tax filing. And I appreciate you being here today, Wendy, and inviting me on the call. Just a little bit about who we are here at Avenue. We have been in the tax administration business for over 40 years, serving state and local governments. You can see the map to the right. The blue dots indicate our client locations. We have a pretty big footprint across the country. And if you can see the red dots, those are our physical Avenue office locations. And so we do have a couple locations here in Texas. We have more than 3,500 state and local customers and over 850 employees here at Avenue. You can go to the next slide. So the agenda for today, and listen, we're going to keep this super casual. So there's a chat feature. If you have a question, if you have a comment, feel free to chime in. I know I'm going to pass to Wendy in a minute. She's going to do sort of the live demo piece of this. So I'll be watching the questions, and as they come in, I'll just chime in and we'll read those out loud and hopefully have the answers for you. But the general agenda for today is first, we're going to talk about why the requirements are changing. So for me, I like to understand why I have to do something. It makes doing the something a lot easier. And then we're going to talk about how this applies to you and what the form looks like, and just some summary FAQs at the end. So with that, we'll dig into the next slide. So again, the why. For me personally, the why is very important. So as the city being the tax collector for hotel occupancy tax, it's very important for them to keep a system of record filing histories for you as taxpayers. And so today there's an agreement with Airbnb and HomeAway and VRBO that the transactions that occur on those platforms, they're going to collect those taxes for you and hand them into the city. The problem is when those taxes get handed into the city on your behalf, you're not necessarily getting credit for those taxes. It's a dump of money, no reconciliation. So what the city's trying to do is build a mechanism in the form that you're still filing your return. You're going to have a payment history, and we're also going to give you the area to deduct the sales tax that was processed on Airbnb or HomeAway VRBO. So you don't have to pay that twice. So today, another really important thing is none of the platforms, even Airbnb and HomeAway and VRBO, while they collect the local tax, the city tax, they're not collecting any county tax. So that tax is still your responsibility to collect, accrue, and remit through the portal. And again, the filing histories, it's very important for you all as business owners, because if you were to sell your property and need a tax clearance certificate, which is a normal document required at closing for a property. If this form wasn't set up like this and we were able to give you the filing history and the ability to take the deductions, there would be no way to prove that you had filed all your taxes because they all go through Airbnb. So reconciliation of that data is very important. And bigger picture, zooming out, it just makes it a fair playing field for everybody in the industry. So hopefully that explains a little bit of the why that we had to do some of these changes. You can go there you go. And how does this apply to me? I think this is where probably Wendy's going to be a little better suited to talk through who's affected and how these changes affect you. Wendy?
Okay, thank you, Brandy.
Yeah.
This legislation affects everyone who has a short-term rental property in the city of San Antonio. The changes really went into effect, at least on the portal, just yesterday. The city enacted law that said that for any platform that collects and remits the lodging tax to the state of Texas, then they also are required to collect and remit the tax to the city of San Antonio. The original intent was that that would also apply to county tax, but the way the state legislation is written, it doesn't. And so the platforms will not collect the county tax, which leaves that burden still on you to collect it and remit it and report it. It's very important. So if you were looking, for example, at your at what activities you needed to do in January, for timely filings, you would be filing December taxes in January. In December, Airbnb and HomeAway Verbo were not automatically collecting the San Antonio city tax. So January should look just like December, November, October, all of your prior months. You would be responsible whether it's one of these platforms that's affected or not, you would still be responsible to collect, remit, and report your taxes both to the city and the county. In February for January taxes, same story. You, as the property owner or operator, are responsible for collecting the tax, remitting it to the city, and reporting it through Avenue. No deductions for any of that. Then in March, you're paying and filing for your February tax. And this is where the change comes in. Starting on February 1st, these two platforms, Airbnb and HomeAway Verbo, which is now just Verbo, they began collecting the San Antonio city tax. And as Brandy said, in the month of March, each one of them is going to send one check or one electronic transaction to Avenue that will be a large lump sum for all of their property owners who have properties in the city of San Antonio. They are not paying the county tax. And so you, as the property owner, are required to file your return, because that one check, they're not sending us any data, not a list of properties, not a list of addresses, not your account number, not your short-term rental permit ID. They're sending us none of that. So all we will get will be the money. There is no way, unless you file, for us to know or the city to know that that big lump sum included taxes for your property, unless you file your return. So we've updated the tax return starting with February taxes to allow you deductions for each of those platforms where they have collected your tax and remitted it. And so you will report all of your taxable receipts, so everything that you rented, and then deduct the amount paid, the amount collected through Airbnb, the amount collected through HomeAway Verbo, and then if there's any balance remaining, you will owe city tax on that, and then you owe county tax on the full amount. Because again, these platforms did not collect and will not collect for Bexar County.
Quick question, Wendy. Joanne in the comments wants to know, are VRBO and HomeAway part of the same corporation? I believe the answer to that is yes.
They are. HomeAway bought Verbo, and you can't even go to the HomeAway website anymore. It takes you straight to Verbo. So we're going to go from here into the demo of the tax form. So in our prior presentations, we went through several screens. I'm just going to show you the first couple where we just walked you through what the screens look like. In this case, I'm going to pull over a different window so that you can see the actual live process. So you can do this in the hoteltaxonline.com site now. So once you log in, you're just like you have in the past, you'll click File a New Return and select your state, which will be Texas. We're going to stay with the February 2025 return. This is always going to bring up your most recent available return. You want to choose the short-term rental return. The hotel occupancy return is only applicable to hotel properties. So choose short-term rental and then choose your location and click Next. None of that has changed. The main change, really the only change, well, I'll say the main change on this form is that you now have these two lines that are labeled B and C. So for most people, you're just filing for a single property. So you're going to choose single filer This applies to people who are inside the city of San Antonio. So you'll choose that option if that's where your property is located. And then you'll put in your total net taxable receipts on line A. Now, there's not a place on this form for exemptions. For example, if you had rentals to a government employee that are not taxable, you need to go ahead and subtract those out. So let's say you had $10,000 in taxable rentals. I'll put 10,000 in there. And then that calculates what you would normally owe to the city and to the county. And let's say that 5,000 of those rentals were through Airbnb. So you'll put a 5,000 in there. And let's say you had $1,000 worth of rentals through Verbo. And the system automatically subtracts these two values and says the difference is $4,000. So on other platforms, in this example, this property owner would owe tax to the city on $4,000, and that tax amount is $360. But if you'll notice, to Bexar County, you have to pay tax on the full amount again because those platforms did not collect it. So there are probably about 4 scenarios here. Let's say that the first one is that you only rent through Airbnb. It's the only platform you use. And so in that case, you would put $10,000 on this line, and you would owe 0 tax to the city because you have no taxable receipts. But you owe tax on the full amount for Bexar County.
Hey, Wendy, quick question from Howard in the comments. We're saying taxable receipts, and I think the question is that the same thing as gross earnings in Airbnb? Is that what they call it on the platform?
Yes.
Okay. There you go, Howard.
So if you're only renting through Airbnb, this is what your return would look like. Same thing if you were only renting through Verbo. Oops, I got one too many digits in there.
Mm-hmm.
Your deductions can't exceed your taxable receipts. So in that case, we would owe nothing. You might rent about half of your rentals through Airbnb, and the remainder through Verbo. Again, in that case, you would owe no tax to the city. So taxable receipts for the city of San Antonio, again, would be 0. And then the final scenario there is that you rent some of your rentals through Airbnb, and you rent some through Verbo, but you have some rentals that occur through other platforms or directly with you. Mm-hmm. In that case, you'd put in your full amount, reduced by those 2 deductions, and you would owe tax to the city on $4,000 in this example. The other change to this form is a minor change at the bottom. The portal now requires you to click this box where you acknowledge both the city of San Antonio and Bexar County have always required, but still require that you retain your records for 4 years, for no less than 4 years, for their examination on request. And that includes a request from the administrator, which is Avenue. That's us. In both the Airbnb portal and the Verbo portal, you should have something. I don't know what the technical term is for it, but we call it a payout report that tells you what that platform paid to you. And those are the numbers that you put here on net taxable receipts. That does include if you charge a fee for cleaning, or you charge an additional pet fee. All of those things are taxable. The only thing that's not taxable is any amount that is retained by the platform. So if Airbnb charges a $50 fee to the renter and Airbnb keeps that $50, they're responsible for filing and paying that tax, and you are not, because that money doesn't come to you. So all the money that comes to you is taxable. And so you have to check that box saying you'll keep your records for 4 years.
Yeah. Quick question, Wendy, and I know you're probably way more familiar with the Airbnb site than I am, but Howard has sort of circled back on his question. And it sounds like in Airbnb, gross earnings might be what the guest pays in total, which would maybe include taxes and other fees. So let me just add another question. Is it true that I'm going to pay for taxes against the gross? So I think that's the question, is that the number that they're seeing as the gross number in Airbnb may be inclusive of other fees and taxes and everything. So I don't know if you even know the answer to this, because I'm not familiar with the way Airbnb website is set up, but we would probably need to know gross receipts, not everything included taxes and fees, right?
I have an example here. This is not the property owner's view. This is the renter's view of a couple of examples from Airbnb and Vrbo, showing that the amount that you're paying for the room, and in this example, the amount you're paying for a cleaning fee, are both taxable. This $27.81 is not taxable because that's Airbnb service fee. And so this shows you that the tax amount is $29.55. And so I did a little grid over here to show you the same numbers and calculated it myself. 9% of this taxable amount is $17.73. The state percentage is 6%. That's $11.82, and that totals out to $29.55, the same amount paid here. I don't know the terminology in Airbnb, and I cannot represent or advise you on what exact number you need to pull out of there. The communication that has come to us is that you owe tax on everything that the renter pays that is not retained by Airbnb. And so someone at Airbnb would probably be better to answer that question, because we can advise you on how their system operates or what their reports contain. Same thing here for Vrbo. They have a $160 room rate for one night and a cleaning fee of $85. They charged $25 on their service fee. On the Vrbo site, it actually separated it out to show that the Texas state tax was $14.70 and the San Antonio tax was $22.05. And when I dropped that in Excel, I got the same numbers for a total tax of $25. I'm sorry, of $36.75, but the county amount of $429 would still be due on this rental. You do not have to itemize to say it's this rental and this rental and this rental and this rental. You just need the total of the amounts that were collected on your behalf, and then you have to report that amount. And so I do want to go back and show you, if perhaps you have a property that's outside the city of San Antonio, when you switch this button to say you're outside the city, it retains your taxable receipts, but there are no deductions again on the county amount. And so it just takes away those amounts that are calculated for the city. We also have a bulk filing option. So if you have a lot of properties, I would say, I don't know, if I only had 2 or 3, I would do them individually. But you can do it for as few as 2. You can say that you want to file bulk and download this import file. I'm going to choose one of these just to show you what it looks like. So you choose your file. So if you just download this file, you can fill it out with your values and the numbers that you have, and then upload it. And then it pops everything into a grid for each property account number. You can put your STR number in there or your Avenue account number. The file requires you to say if you're inside the city limits, and you put in your total, again, your total receipts and the 2 deductions, and it calculates everything out for you. And so each one of these lines represents a different property. Notice this last one is not in the city limits, and you're only paying the $27.25 to the county. And then it totals all of that up. So for these values, it would be a little over $8,000 for your tax payment after your deductions. So there is that bulk filing option if you have multiple properties and want to do that. So we're going to go back to just a few of the questions that we've had in prior presentations. The high points are that the platforms that collect the state tax also now have to collect and remit the San Antonio city tax. And that starts with February's taxes due in March. You can file those today. And the deductions do not apply to prior periods. And so if you have back taxes that you owe for January, December, anything in a prior year, the deductions will not be there on the screen for you. And so those will be filed just as you have filed them in the past. The platforms do not collect or remit any of the county tax. And so you as the property owner or operator are responsible for collecting it, remitting it, and reporting it. And then we're giving you the change on the screen really is to add those two fields for deductions and to update the calculations to apply those deductions to the city tax and not the county tax. And keep in mind that not all the platforms are collecting the city taxes. And so don't just assume that that's happening. You want to verify and look at the reports that are available to you. I know with Airbnb, they have a custom tax feature. And so you want to double check and make sure that you're, if you had been using the custom taxes in the past, that those are set up properly now for the platform to collect that city tax on your behalf. And then anything that is rented through a different platform, you owe city and county tax on those amounts. You also owe state tax, but that is that's a different thing. So if you have your property listed on Airbnb, but it's also listed somewhere else and the rental occurs through some other platform, even though it's listed on Airbnb, if it wasn't actually rented through Airbnb, then that tax is not paid for you. So please keep that in mind. Don't just assume, well, it's listed on Airbnb, so I don't owe the tax on that, because it depends on where your rental comes through. So please pay attention to that. We launched the changes in the portal in hoteltaxonline.com yesterday. And you were not able to file the February taxes until yesterday, but they are available now. And then for a few questions that we've had in the past, we had questions about Texas state tax. We do not administer this. We at Avenue do not administer the Texas state tax. And as for other exemptions, such as those to a government employee, those you need to take out of that very top number. The first number that you enter needs to exclude those exemption amounts. How do you get the total receipts from the platform? Again, you want to look at that payout report. If you're not sure what number to use, you need to contact your platform to be sure that you're reporting on the right number. Do we have to pay tax on the platform fees? That's that service fee that Airbnb and Vrbo charge. No, you do not. We had some confusion about line A and line B and line C and how they are related. The very first number that you enter should be the largest number. And the two numbers below that, either one of them could be equal to that number. So you could have $10,000 in rentals. All of them occurred through Airbnb, in which case lines A and B would be 10,000. You could have rented them all through Vrbo, in which case it would be 10,000. And then line B would be 0. Line C would be 10,000. Those two lines B and C might add up to the top line, the line A. So you could have $5,000 on each line. That totals up to the $10,000 we put on line 1. Or you could have a remainder. So you could have $10,000 on line 1, $2,000 on line 2, $3,000 on line 3. 2 and 3 is 5. You'd still have $5,000 that's taxable by the city in that case. So they may match, they may total up, or they may not total up, and you could have a remainder. They cannot exceed the amount of your taxable receipts. And then how are long-term rentals reported? A long-term rental would be reported as an exemption. And so if you have someone who either rents your property for 30 days or more at one time in one booking, or you've leased your property out, let's say that your short-term rental permit is good for 3 years. And in the middle of that, you have a 1 year lease. You want to retain your permit, but you still have to file that zero return every month. That's very important because if you don't file it, you're going to appear to be delinquent.
That's right.
So please be sure that you are treating those long-term rentals, 30 days or more, as an exemption, and just deduct it. Just reduce your total taxable receipts by that amount. And then we went through this example on how they are showing, how the platforms are showing those taxes to the renter. Again, that's not how they're showing them to you. We're not privy to that information.
I have a couple of questions here in the chat, Wendy, 'cause I was
Okay.
letting you finish that without interrupting you. But Rodrigo wants to know if we have a number that he can call in and speak to someone who speaks Spanish.
Yes, we do. You can call our support desk at 888-885-SATX and request a Spanish speaker, and there'll be someone to help you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Let's see here. Joanne had a problem with streaming the live YouTube video. She missed whether or not the gross receipts are the total dollars the host receive, inclusive of cleaning fees.
It does include your cleaning fees. That's anything that Airbnb or Vrbo, any of the monies that they give to you are taxable. And so the only amount that they collect from the renter that is not taxable for you is the service fee that they retain for the privilege of using their site.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And Toltec says that they're logging in at Avenue, but they don't see the updated platform. Can we maybe direct them on the right place to go and access the platform to file? Is that what's the website
It's
on?
It's the same website that you would have been using in the past. I'm going to flip back over to that screen. It's hoteltaxonline.com. I'll log out so that you can see the homepage. This is what the site should look like for you. You put in your username and password, and when you log in, you're not really doing anything different than you would have been doing filing your taxes last month. You file a new return and then make the selections here. So Texas, it automatically picks February since that's the most recent one. You want the San Antonio short-term rental return, and then choose one of your locations.
Okay.
And hit next, and that takes you to this form with the deductions on it.
Perfect. Thanks, Wendy. Goa says, how about VRBO commission fees? They've been subtracting that from their payout to determine taxes. Is that correct? Commission fees, would that be something that's taxable, or should that be subtracted out?
If the commission fees are something that come to you as the property owner or operator, yes. If the commission fee is, let me scroll back a little bit. If by commission fee you mean this service fee where the renter is paying this amount, but this amount does not come to you, then that is not taxable.
Okay.
By you, for you.
And Marie wants to know what necessitated this change, and I can kind of fill in the gaps here a little bit. Is prior to now, Airbnb and VRBO were not collecting taxes on your behalf and sending that over to the city, and so there was a change in the city that a new ordinance established that if the platform was remitting state tax, they had to now collect and remit the city tax. So there was an ordinance change. And because of that, we had to adjust the form so that you all still have a place to file. You still have a way to maintain a monthly filing history, but using those deduction features, you're able to deduct out the transactions that you paid taxes through somebody else, and you get to the bottom line of the amount that wasn't taxed yet, and that'll fill in the form. So it was a local ordinance change that kind of was the catalyst for this. Nyoka and Reggie say, you advise that the tax is charged on whatever's paid out to us, but Airbnb pays the host an amount less than their 3% host service fee. Shouldn't Bayard County tax be charged on the nightly rate and fees? So again, I'll step in here, Wendy, keep me honest if this is not right, but the Bayard County tax is levied on the transaction. It's just not collected by Airbnb or VRBO. That tax is your responsibility to accrue and report and pay. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
In the couple of examples that we had of Airbnb and Verbo, again, looking at the renter's view, this total tax amount of $29.55 that they charged
Mhm.
is the total of the 9% to the city and the 6% to the state. It does not include the 1.75% to the county. And so, as the property owner, um, you are responsible for collecting this. In Airbnb's system, I believe they have something called professional tools that allow you to put in a custom tax rate. And you would need to do that in order to charge this 1.75% and collect it as part of the Airbnb listing. But that is your responsibility for each listing. I did not see a way to do that across the board to say if I have 4 properties, I'm applying this 1.75% to all 4 properties. I believe it's a per listing change that you have to make. Some people, alternatively, again, I cannot tell you how to do this, but some people alternatively just increase their room rate by 1.75% or something close to that so that they're not having to come out of pocket for the county tax. And so that's if you don't want to set up the tax rate for each one of your listings, then you could do that. But that is your option.
Good. Thank you. And Marlon says, and I actually said this yesterday about parenting my teenager, Wendy, oddly, is there a manual for all of this? This is all new to me, so I'm a lot lost on all of this. I felt that way about my teenager. I'm joking. We do have some FAQs online, and maybe is there a place that we can direct them to for some, I mean, on the last slide, I know you have the phone number, the email address. We're fully staffed. I mean, if you have questions or need support, call us. That's what we're here for. We can take your phone call and we can walk you through and help you with whatever you're stuck on. But is there a place that has maybe a video, Wendy, where it's setting up an account or whatever?
We previously had set up a couple of videos that walked you through the process of setting up your account, walked you through the process of filing a return. And I believe there was a section in there that walked you through the process of filing a bulk return, which I just displayed to you briefly in this session. We are updating those training materials for you. There is a PDF file that is available, I believe, from the city that just allows you kind of to walk through it in written form. But we're doing a couple of extra videos because the system has changed and we needed to update those materials.
Okay, good. Philip is asking, how do I amend a prior return that he overpaid for? So amending a prior return and requesting a refund.
Okay. To amend a prior return, you would have to fill out the paper form and make the adjustment there. And then there's a refund petition available on our website in our, what I think of as the paper resources. It's a long list of downloadable PDFs where you could fill out the refund petition and send that into our office. You can't request the refund until after you filed your amended return.
Right, because that's to be processed and reviewed and approved by the city, correct?
Yes.
Good. Howard is saying now, based on your example of Airbnb tax calculations, the gross would be $253.36. Would that be the amount we enter as taxable receipts?
The taxable amount on this example is 197. And so tax on 197 is for the city is 1773 and for the county is 345.
Okay, so that takes the taxable room rental rates plus the taxable cleaning fees to give the total taxable receipts. And then under that, you're applying the city and the state tax. Okay. That makes sense to me. Does that help you, Howard? Let me know. Gerardo, is there going to be a report showing what Airbnb and VRBO are retaining or filing so we can file using the same income they're using for our BAR taxes? In the past, my 1099 forms sent by Airbnb and VRBO have been showing an income higher than the one I received. How certain are we going to be that they're not overcharging us with city taxes? I mean, these are really good questions. So thank you all for this. Some of this is going to be, accounting issues and questions with your Airbnb or VRBO accounts, because we're not really familiar with their website, with their forms, with what their reports look like for you. We're not using those sites. So, Wendy, unless you have some kind of insight here, I would say that's probably an Airbnb question, just to verify what is in the reports without us just guessing.
That's correct. I have worked with a lot of short-term rental clients obviously in San Antonio, but in many other cities as well. And in dealing with Airbnb, since I am not a short-term rental property owner or operator, they will not even speak to me. So I have not been able to get assistance from anyone at Airbnb to guide us through, because I would really love to be able to answer these questions for you, but they're really questions that deal with Airbnb. If you have questions about using the hoteltaxonline.com website, more than happy and capable to help you. But I've given you really all the resources that I have as they relate to Airbnb and Vrbo, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Yvonne says, do we have to report to the city of Leon Valley? Is that a different city within Bexar County?
Leon Valley is not one of our clients, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if they have a lodging tax ordinance. So I can't answer that.
Yeah, so for the purposes of this form, this is to capture taxes that are levied on the city of San Antonio and the county portion of everything outside of the city of San Antonio. So if Leon Valley is within the county, you'll still owe the county tax through us. And you may want to check with that local authority to see if there's any city tax due for Leon Valley.
The city of San Antonio has a contract with the county. And so that is to administer the county tax, but it doesn't cover the individual municipalities that are outside the city of San Antonio. So if your property is inside the city of San Antonio, our system will collect both San Antonio and Bexar County taxes. But if you are outside the city of San Antonio, we are still collecting just the Bexar County amount, but those other individual jurisdictions, we don't have any other clients in Bexar County to be able to even advise you if they have an ordinance or not.
Right. And it looks like Howard is in the site live now, and he's saying in the Hotel Tax Online portal, when we create a return type for short-term rental, it's asking me to select a Texas tax type. What options do I select?
A Texas tax type. Let me see if
while you're looking at that, he also commented again and says, Wendy, just a suggestion. Your screen is showing the example of Airbnb tax calculation. It would be helpful to show how the Airbnb VRBO guest view numbers on the left map to the hotel tax online fields. And Joanne is saying Leon Valley is in Bexar County. So you'll pay the county tax for Leon Valley transactions through this site, but you may want to check with the city to see how they want you to handle the city portion for Leon Valley rate.
Okay, to set up a return in the Tax Online website, you're going to go to My Returns, Return Setup. You can also, let's see if there's not a link to that from the homepage, but go to Return Setup and say that you want to add a new return. and we'll choose Texas, which return is going to be the San Antonio short-term rental return. I have a couple of, I only have one location remaining in my list personally, and I just called it location 3. And so, but you may have multiple locations in here. You have to put in your San Antonio account number. That's your Avenue account number. It's a 6-digit number. And so you should have received at some point a letter from Avenue or the city that provided you with that account number. If you need to apply for an account number, you can click this link to apply for it. Your filing status is going to be monthly for San Antonio, and then you click add return. You just have to do that one time for each property. And then once you've added that, then you can go in back to your homepage and file a new return, and it will be available to you here on this page.
Okay, simple enough. Gerardo is saying, is Avenue going to provide us with a report of what VRBO and Airbnb have been reporting and paying? Short answer, no, because we don't know. I think this is actually effective this month. So there hasn't been a history. This is a new thing. But when they do start paying, unfortunately, that's the problem we were trying to illustrate in the beginning, is there's not a lot of reconciliation detail or there's no detail. So they're going to send an amount of money to the city, and we're not going to know who that came from. So that's why it's actually going to be helpful for the city, for you all to file your monthly return and to take those deductions, because it gives the city a little bit of a control document to say, if they run a report for the month of March and they say, well, all of my taxpayers in total reported $50,000 in deductions through Airbnb, that should be pretty close to what they got from Airbnb. So, I mean, I hope you could just appreciate there's not any detail there. So we're not going to be able to provide anything there. That's why we're leaning to you all to help us. Trying to fill out our February tax, and the drop down doesn't give me an option for short-term rental. It only gives hotel occupancy tax.
Okay. In that case, when whoever set up your account set you up as a hotel, instead of short-term rental. So you want to go through that process that I just showed. Go up to My Returns and Return Setup and add a new return and just fill out this form. You'll choose Texas and then choose the San Antonio short-term rental return. This basically creates a blank form in the background, a template, if you will, for all your future filings. But when we first started administering for San Antonio back in, I want to say it was June of 2023, a lot of people accidentally set up as a hotel instead of the short-term rental return. And so this is the return that you need to set up. So in that drop list, if there's not a short-term rental return when you're filing a new return, you need to back up a step and go here to this page. Again, that's under My Returns, Return Setup, and then add a new return.
Okay.
So Texas, short-term rental, and choose your location and put in your account number. And that makes it available in that drop list where you were looking.
Okay, perfect. Guy is asking, will this video be saved to watch again? And the answer is yes. And actually, this is the third of a series. So they're all going to be saved on YouTube. If you search out Avenue Insights and Analytics, you can find our channel on YouTube. And you'll see the entire series of all 3 videos. And they're pretty much the same, but each one's going to have probably a little bit different content. So feel free to watch any of those 3 parts of this.
In registering for this webinar, here in the next day or so, you will also receive an email with a link to this saved presentation.
Oh, perfect. I forgot about that. Good. Howard's asking, where can I find the Avenue account number? I'm not sure if I understand that question. Do you know what he's talking about, Wendy?
Yes. When you applied for your short-term rental permit, and just to state in case anyone's not aware, if you're operating a short-term rental property in San Antonio, you are required to have a permit. Your permit's good for 3 years, and that is handled through the city, through the Development Services Division, I think is the name of it. It's a different department that handles your taxes, but
Right.
you are required to have a permit. when you applied for your permit and it was approved, you would have gotten a letter or an email from DSD that contains that Avenue account number. If you don't have that, can't find it, or whatever, you can call our support desk and we can look it up for you.
Okay, good. It looks like Nokia and Reggie says, I created and filed a hotel occupancy tax return for January by mistake, even though I was not required to file because I only received my tax ID in February. What should I do? So you filed a tax return in January. Did you collect? Because if you collected tax, you have to report that, right, Wendy?
Right. If you only received your number in February, but you had rentals in January, then you do owe tax on those rentals. Even if you didn't specifically collect the tax from the renter, or in this case for January, these platforms would not have been collecting your tax for you, then you are responsible to pay taxes on those. Now, if you filed a January return and you didn't actually have rentals in January, that's a different thing, and you need to request a refund. The good thing is that the hotel occupancy return uses the same rate, both for city and county, as the short-term rental return.
Okay,
So you wouldn't have overpaid just by virtue of having used the wrong form.
The wrong form, right. So just to follow up on that last comment, they did not collect anything for that period. They filed by mistake. So
okay, if you didn't have rentals for that month, then you can request a refund.
perfect. And Howard says, if we've been filing as a hotel occupancy tax return instead of a short-term rental, what must we do to reconcile that? I think I just understood you to say that the rates are the same. Does it matter? Does he need to go back and fix that?
You don't need to file amendments for your prior returns, but I would set up the return as a short-term rental return and file that return.
Okay.
That's what's going to give you these two deductions for Airbnb and Vrbo.
Oh, right, because that's not on the hotel return.
Right, it's not on the
Oh,
hotel
yeah.
return.
So Howard, go back in like Wendy showed and reset everything up so that you're going to be filing the return for the short-term rental so that you do get that option. And he's asking about the support desk number. I think that's on the last slide.
I will pull that up.
You can flash that again, and Howard, you can jot that down. Move this box out of my screen so I can see it. 1-888-885-SATX. That's our support number. Yep, you're welcome, Howard. I don't think, look, we'll give it another minute. These have been great questions. I love being interactive like this and talking through some of this, keeping it casual. I think we've hit everything that I've seen in the chat. So if not, pop your question back in so it's at the top. Or if you have any other questions before we close out this session, go ahead and add those now, and we're happy to get to them. And I don't see anything else coming in. So hopefully we answered everything. If not, feel free to call the toll-free number here on the screen. And there is also is this the ServiceNow, Wendy? What is that? Is that to put a ticket in?
ServiceNow, yes, that's our ticketing system for our support system. And so the outgoing communications will have this link as well. I appreciate you may not be able to click this link through YouTube. I don't think it quite works that way.
Right.
But you would go to this site instead of sending an email. If you wanted to provide screenshots, or if you prefer to interact electronically instead of over the phone, that's the address that you would go to, and you just fill out a form on that page, and that puts you into our support system, and an agent will reply. The reply will come to your email address. So at that point, it will be an email exchange, but the initiation of any support ticket that doesn't come in through the phone has to go through that portal.
Okay, perfect. Well, with that, we'll wrap. I want to just thank everybody that joined today. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. And Wendy, thank you so much. You're just incredible today. Just a wealth of knowledge.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thank
It's
you
always
all.
a pleasure to work with you.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day, everybody.